Emerald City of Oz. Magic Picture. Princess Ozma was a very busy ruler, and she looked carefully after the comfort and welfare of her people, and always tried to make them happy. If any conflict started, it was decided fairly. If anyone needed counsel or advice, she was ready and willing to listen to them. She loved the people, and the people loved her. For a day or two after Dorothy and her companions had started on their trip, Ozma was occupied with the affairs of her kingdom. Then she began to think of what Uncle Henry and Aunt Em could do that was important and would keep them busy. It also needed to be easy enough for them to manage day to day. She decided to make Uncle Henry the keeper of the jewels. Someone was needed to count and keep track of all the bins and barrels of emeralds, diamonds, rubies, and other precious stones that were in the royal storehouses. That would keep Uncle Henry busy enough, assuming the work satisfied him. It was harder to find something for Aunt Em to do. The palace was full of servants, and there was no housework that Aunt Em could do that someone was not already responsible for. Ozma sat as a princess should in her magnificent room, engaged in thought, not about her comfort, but about the well-being of others. Then she looked up at the magic picture. The magic picture was one of the most important treasures in all the land of Oz. It was a large oval picture set in a beautiful artistic silver frame. It hung in a prominent place on the wall of Ozma's private room. When not in use, the picture usually showed a landscape scene, but when Ozma looked at it and wanted to know what any of her friends or family were doing, the magic of the picture was clearly displayed. The landscape scene would slowly fade away, and in its place the person Ozma wanted to see appeared. They were surrounded by the actual place and background they were in. The princess could view anyone or any part of the world she wished, and she could watch the actions of anyone she wanted, whenever she wanted. Ozma had often seen Dorothy in her Kansas home this way, and now, having a little leisure, she expressed a desire to see her friend again. It looked as if Dorothy had been lost from her friends. However, now she had returned, and there was some kind of happy reunion going on. Everyone was excited to see Dorothy, as if they had been separated for some time. This is what Ozma watched in the magic picture when she thought of Dorothy and her traveling companions. Dorothy, Toto, and Billina found their way back to the main road at the crossroads. When they came to the signpost there, to their joy, were the tents of the wizard pitched beside the path and the kettle bubbling merrily over a fire. The Shaggy Man and Omby Amby were gathering firewood, while Uncle Henry and Aunt Em sat in their camp chairs talking with the wizard. They all ran forward to greet Dorothy as she approached, and Aunt Em exclaimed, "Goodness gracious, where have you been? We were so worried." "You ditched us for the whole day," added the Shaggy Man reproachfully. "Well, you see, I've been lost," explained Dorothy, "and I tried really hard to find my way back to you, but just couldn't find the path." "Did you wander around the forest all day?" asked Uncle Henry. "You must be starving," said Aunt Em. "No," said Dorothy, "I'm not hungry. I had a wheelbarrow and a piano for breakfast, and had lunch with the king." "Ah," exclaimed the wizard, nodding with a bright smile, "so you've been having adventures again." "That's crazy," cried Aunt Em. "Who's heard of eating a wheelbarrow?" "It wasn't very big," said Dorothy, "and it had a zuzu wheel." "And I ate the crumbs," added Billina, soberly. "Sit down and tell us all about it," begged the wizard. "We've hunted for you all day. I finally found your footprints in the path. I knew it was you because of Billina and Toto's tracks nearby. We found the path by accident, and I figured it would only lead you to two places. I decided you were either at one or the other of those places. So we made camp and waited for you to return. And with luck, it did." Now, Dorothy, tell us, where have you been? To Bunbury? Or to Bunnybury? Why, I've been to both, she replied. But first, I went to Utensia, which isn't on any path at all. She then sat down and told everyone of the day's adventures, and to be sure, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry were astonished at the story. But after seeing these cut-in clips, remarked her uncle, we shouldn't wonder at anything in this strange country. Seems like the only common and ordinary folks here are ourselves, said Aunt Em shyly. Now that we're together again and one reunited party, observed the Shaggy Man, where are we to next? Have some dinner and a night's rest, answered the wizard promptly, and then proceed upon our journey. Where are we going? Asked the Captain General. We haven't visited the rigmaroles yet, said Dorothy. I'd like to see them, wouldn't you? I have no idea what they are or if they're interesting, interjected Aunt Em, but based on everything else we've seen, they probably are. And then, continued the wizard, we should visit the Tin Woodman and Jack Pumpkinhead and our old friend the Scarecrow on our way home. That will be nice, cried Dorothy eagerly. Well, whatever you say, Henry and I are just along for the ride, remarked Aunt Em. They're the best friends I have, asserted Dorothy, and you're sure to like them, Aunt Em, because everyone likes them. It was getting late, and twilight was approaching, so they ate a fine dinner, the wizard magically produced from the kettle, and then they all went to bed in the cozy tents. Everyone was up bright and early the next morning, and Dorothy didn't have the chance to venture or wander from the camp that morning. Do you know where the road is? She asked the wizard. No, my dear, replied the wizard, but we will find one, and I think I have fixed this missing road situation once and for all. After breakfast, he waved his hand toward the tents, and they became handkerchiefs again, which were at once returned to the pockets of their owners. Then they climbed into the red wagon, and the Sawhorse inquired, Which way? Never mind which way, replied the wizard. Just go as you please, and you're sure to be right. I've enchanted the wheels of the wagon, and they will roll in the right direction, have no fear. Ozma was glued to the magic picture all this time. Seeing that Dorothy had been indeed lost from the group for a time, she was a bit worried, but now she was back again, and everything seemed to be fine. All were excited to keep the journey going. Ozma was satisfied and daydreamed a little of her personal adventures with Dorothy. They seem happy and are doubtless having a good time, the girl ruler said to herself. The images of her friends now faded from the magic picture, and a landscape of the sun setting on the sea through the mother tree slowly appeared. The sun was always setting in some part of the world, she considered thoughtfully. The setting sun made Ozma think of the time when she was with Dorothy and her army. They marched to the Elf King's underground cavern, beyond the land of Eve, and forced the old monarch to liberate his captives, who belonged to the royal family of Eve. Dorothy had captured King Rokot's magic belt and brought it back to the land of Oz. The princess smiled at the memory of this adventure, and then she wondered what the Elf King had been doing since then. She was just curious, so Ozma glanced at the magic picture and wished to see the King of the Elves. Her intuition was somehow always on point. Rokot the Red went every day into a tunnel to supervise how the work was going in a tunnel. He was pushing the elves to dig and work as hard as possible. He was there now, sweating, panting, and ordering. Ozma saw him plainly in the magic picture. She saw this underground tunnel, reaching far underneath the deadly desert, which separated the land of Oz from the mountains beneath which the Elf King had his extensive caverns. She saw that the tunnel was being made in the direction of the Emerald City, and knew at once it was being dug so that the army of the elves could march through it and attack her own beautiful and peaceful country. I suppose King Rokot is planning revenge against us, she said, amused, and he probably thinks he can surprise us and make us his captives and slaves. How sad it is that anyone can have such wicked thoughts. But I must not blame King Rokat so severely, for he is an elf, and his nature is not as gentle as my own. Then she dismissed from her mind further thought of the tunnel at that time and began to wonder if Aunt Em would not be happy as a royal mender of the stockings of the ruler of Oz. Ozma wore a few holes in her stockings and sometimes needed mending. Aunt Em ought to be able to do that very nicely. The next day, the princess watched the tunnel again in her magic picture, and every day afterward, she devoted a few minutes to inspecting the work. It was not especially interesting, but she felt that it was her duty. The elves were planning to invade Oz. Ozma yawned. Slowly but surely, the big arched hole crept through the rocks underneath the deadly desert, and day by day it drew nearer and nearer to the Emerald City.